When people ask me about professional photography, the most common questions I get asked are things like, what is the best camera for fashion or product photography? Or which is the best lens for portrait photography? The reality is that the most important thing you can have isn't the top camera or lenses, it's an intricate understanding of light. My number one tip for taking better photos is this: don't think you know light, know light. In this video, I'm going to help you get started. An understanding of light is a skill that will translate to all areas of photography, whether you're creating an advertising image for a client, photographing a high-end fashion campaign, or simply capturing your treasured family memories. Light can make or break an image. If you're looking to improve your photography, it's essential that you're able to recognize light and know how to use it. To do this, it's important that you understand how light works and the fundamental principles, so that you can benefit from and use that knowledge when you're creating your images. I'm going to run through 6 key fundamentals of using light. Number 1, size of the light. The size of the light source is very important, as this is what determines the crispness or softness of the shadows. A small light source will result in harder shadows with clearly defined edges. The smaller the light source, the sharper those shadows will be, but remember, the shadow will be sharper where the distance between the subject and the shadow is less, and that a large light source that's a long way away is actually still a small light source. Any light source that is larger than a point light source will result in gradually softer shadows. Number 2, hard or soft light. Understanding the difference between hard and soft light and knowing how to create each is important because, as I mentioned, apparent size from the subject's perspective plays a large part in the hardness or softness of a light. And depending on whether you're using a large light source or a small light source, you'll get very different results. Hard light, for example, reveals far more texture than soft light, but it can also result in harsh, specular reflections on skin or products with shiny reflective surfaces. Soft light results in lower contrast, lower texture, and flatter, smoother looking images, but can often look a bit dull. It is possible to combine hard and soft light in the same image, but knowing how to control it is key. There is also a variety of levels of light between hard and soft light, as well as paradox situations where you can have multiple hard lights over a large area, creating both a hard and soft light look simultaneously. In this example, I demonstrate how you can also create super hard light shadows and soft light in the same single shot for an ethereal lighting effect. Number 3, the position of the light. The position and distance of your light source, whether the light is in front or to the side, behind, low down or up above, allows us to control the direction of the shadows and will also influence the amount of texture you reveal on your subject and the level of contrast. The closer the light, the bigger it is, and therefore the softer it will be. The further away it is, the smaller it is, and therefore the harder it is. But keep in mind the inverse square law, which I will come to shortly, because this will come into play here, and this can result in a further away light source actually becoming lower in contrast when in a confined space, as demonstrated in these 2 images. When a light is further away, theoretically it should be harder and more contrasty, but because of the inverse square law, more light will bounce around your studio, resulting in shadow fill, meaning the shadows will become lighter and the image will appear less contrasty. Frontal light will produce less shadows and texture, whereas lower or side lighting will create more shadows and therefore texture. But the direction of light also greatly affects the viewer's subconscious perception of mood. In the natural world, we only ever see the light from above or from the side, but not from below, which is why many horror films will create unease by lighting the subject from below. Number 4, inverse square law. I provide a detailed explanation of the inverse square law and demonstrate how it works in the introductory video of my lighting theory course, But to briefly summarise, the inverse square law relates to the fall off of light. That is, how quickly it loses its intensity, and it is dependent on the distance and the apparent size of the light source from the subject. Basically, what this means is that the further the light source is away from the subject, then the more gradual the drop in intensity of the light will be compared to a light source that is closer to the subject, where you will have a quicker drop in light intensity over an equivalent distance. This fundamental principle often bemuses even many pro photographers, yet it is an essential part of the physics of light that photographers can harness to transform their images and overcome many of the problems of working in a small space. Number 5, the colour of light. Everyone has heard of warm light or cold light, and many photographers have a good understanding of white balance and even the Kelvin scale. But there are many factors to do with the spectrum of lights and the difference between full spectrum and low spectrum lighting that will dramatically alter your images for better or for worse. There is also a whole area of science revolving around human visual perception, colour theory, and using subtle colour on lighting that will rearrange the mood and even the three-dimensionality of an image. Number 6, lighting modifiers. Lighting modifiers also obviously have an effect on the light. That is, of course, their purpose. Softboxes, for example, can produce soft, even light, whereas a standard reflector will produce a harder light with greater contrast. But much of the effects of lighting modifiers rely on them being used at appropriate distances from their subject, and many photographers make the mistake of using them far too far away. Understanding the different type of modifiers and their effects means you'll know how to shape and modify light to achieve particular results and create mood and atmosphere in your photography. I use a variety of modifiers for different types of photography to create different moods and emotion. For certain product photography, I often use softboxes and large reflectors. For small products, I often use specialist modifiers such as pico lights with projection attachments, and in food photography, it may be as simple as a large octobox, or in fashion, it may be large parabolic lights. However, probably the most common modifier I use is actually a homemade scrim. I use scrims for a lot of my commercial work and advertising photography, whether it be bottles, jewellery, cosmetics, watches, or even electronic devices. They produce a beautiful gradated light that is ideal for product shots. Knowing which modifiers do what and why you should use them is an essential part of being a professional photographer. By really understanding what type of light will come out of a Fresnel or honeycomb grid or a para or a beauty dish will transform your understanding of lighting and creating emotion with light. These two images are a great example of how lighting can create a particular mood or emotion. Compositionally, these two images are exactly the same product in the same place on the same background, but they have a completely different feel because of the way the light has been modified. These two shots are the same model, the same pose, the same camera and lens, but the two shots feel completely different based on the emotion dictated by the modifiers used. Here's another example of the same set, the same model, but by utilising two vastly different lighting techniques, I can create two totally different feelings and emotions to the viewer. I often get photographers asking me what lighting setup that they should use for a particular shot, and I always find this fascinating and bizarre at the same time. Why don't they just learn the effects of lighting, how to control it, and the emotion it can convey, and then they would never need to ask because they'd have the knowledge to simply do it. If you want to start doing, then check out what we have to offer on Karl Taylor Education. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching. Get my completely free photography course with no sign-up required. You can also access our free 90-page ebook. Just click the link or go to karltayloreducation.com.